Hello and welcome to Positive Parenting. I'm Deanne Conrad, Community Relations Supervisor for the Sioux Falls School District. Positive Parenting is a joint venture between the medical and child development professionals of Sanford Health and our education professionals in the Sioux Falls School District. Our topic today is screen time. Almost everything you see nowadays that kids are paying any attention to has a screen on it. And we need to talk a little bit about what the rules should be in terms of what's appropriate and maybe how much is too much. It's easy to allow the kids to be in front of the television and then they pick up their iPod or their iPad or their iPhone or their whatever, and it can easily consume a good chunk of the day. So we're going to talk a little bit about limits and figure out what is the best choice for children at a variety of ages. So we have our guests joining us today to talk about this important topic, and we will start with you, Tressa, if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Tressa Dijkstra and I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner at Sanford Children's. I work in developmental and behavioral pediatrics.
Thank you. And
I'm Val Peters, and I am the early childhood coordinator for the Sioux Falls School District.
So this topic of screen time and what's appropriate, what do we know about how all of these very fast and creative images in front of the eyes of our children, what do we know about how that impacts their brains and their overall health and life?
We know that overexposure to those images makes it harder for kids to pay attention, makes it harder for them to get good rest at night. And depending on the types of media that they're receiving, if it's violent or explicitly sexual, that those can change their behaviors.
Mm-hmm. So those very, we think, well, it's a learning opportunity, or there is, this program that they love and it's going to be a reward or something along that line. But there are really lots of different whether we know it or not, the TV seems to be on. Mm-hmm. Everything seems to be accessible. What are there certain limits that we need to set for kids?
The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no more than 2 hours of high quality media during the day.
Ooh, high quality. What does that entail?
That might be programming that's educational. It could be games or apps that are educational and have a learning component. And I would probably argue that a parent or a caregiver be with the child when they're using those media. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a mismatch because right now the estimate is for most children they're spending 7+ hours in front of some type of screen. And again, a lot of that is uncensored and not the same type of high quality media that we would hope for.
Right. I know you've paid quite a bit of attention to that too, because that does seem to impact how children are in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And so what have you found that is important for parents to know?
Well, I agree with what you said, that the average child is getting a lot of media time and screen time. And screen time can be anything from TV, and not just sitting in front of the TV, but having that TV on, to being involved with digital media, whether it's an iPad, a phone, any type of where I'm in front of a screen. And what we know about kids and how kids learn is that they learn through authentic engagement with their environments, with people in their environment, with materials in their environment, and with activities in their environment that are developmentally appropriate and meaningful. So using media and screen time doesn't provide that for young children, so they aren't engaged. And even when a child is playing with toys on the floor and the TV is on in the background, that's interrupting that rhythm of play for children, and they focus on things that are happening or they hear on that TV. So just having times at home when there's no screen time. The TV is off, setting those boundaries and those limits. And I couldn't agree more with being actively engaged. If your child is on a screen or involved with a screen, you are there with them and you're talking about it. And you know what's going to happen on that screen before it happens in front of the child. Content is so important. Everything is labeled, it seems, educational. And yet,
It's a buzzword for...
As a parent, we need to know what is educational. So just because it says it's an educational app does not mean it's an educational app or an educational TV show, or that it's educationally relevant or developmentally appropriate for my child at this particular age. So many apps involve just touching or swiping, and that's not interacting with it in a way that engages children in the right way.
It's so easy, though.
It is easy, which is why I think we've seen screen time and media and devices become somewhat of a pacifier or a babysitter for children. They're amazed by it, and children, when you can hand a phone to a 2-year-old many times, and they
completely
can
figure it out.
Sometimes operate it better than the adult who owns the phone, which is kind of an indicator that maybe there's been too much screen time already. But for children to be ready for school later, they need to develop the skills of being able to wait for feedback, to be able to attend to an activity, and to be able to attend to an activity without getting an immediate response. So they're learning how to take turns, they're learning how to wait for an answer, they're learning how to problem solve. And when you're in front of a TV or a screen and that activity is happening and it's not necessarily meaningful, but it's just constant activity, kids aren't learning those skills that will allow them to participate in more authentic experiences.
And again, those fast-paced sort of, I think of, even if it's a math problem or an app or something like that, 1 + 3 equals, and you touch it and you go, that might be encouraging the student to say, well, it's on my command. I'm doing this on my command. And so when I ask a question or need help with something in a classroom setting, I want it on my command. And that can really be a conflict of, this is the expectation here and this is the expectation here. It's different between the two. So
I agree. I think kids are having a harder time with that weight, dealing with frustrations, because it's very easy to hand them a phone or something, and that kind of stops the fit or the tantrum, and children need to figure out how to cope with waiting and not having their needs met immediately, with things not going their way. And phones and other type of media, things go their way and they can quick fix it, and they just don't have that experience of feeling frustration and knowing, yeah, it'll pass. And so it just builds in them, and we see a lot of kids who just haven't developed that emotional ability to wait and to cope.
Now, before we started the program, and today you and I were talking about the very antiquated sort of devices that we had when we were younger. But I can say that was, I used those tools, but in a much more limited capacity than my children are using their technology today. And so we probably have seen that increase, the amount of time, and I guess you indicated that with the number of hours.
Right, and I think when you and I were talking about our little tablets or devices that we had, mine was purely math, and it was a great tool for me to pick up on speed.
Sure.
And I think that there are good apps out there and good opportunities, computer games. For me as a parent, talking with my children's therapist, whether it's a speech articulation kind of app to work on, or if it's my second grader who needs help with their math speed. But I think educators can really be a good avenue to help us decide, okay, what is educational, and then and using it in the right way.
Sure, and there are suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
I know our teachers have put together lists of apps and things like that that are important and would be helpful to a
And
child's
there are
development.
lots of resources out there for parents to be able to know what the content of gaming is big with kids, and kids start gaming at a very, very young, probably too young age. And it's so important for parents to know what the content of those games are. Oftentimes they're a popular game and my friend has it, so I want it. But parents need to be aware of what the age restrictions or limits are on the game and what the content is in the game, so that children aren't just surrounded by images that are they're not ready for.
Appropriate.
And primetime TV has changed over the years. The shows that maybe wouldn't have been on earlier in the evening are now on earlier in the evening. And we can often think as a parent, well, my child is doing something different. They're not paying attention to this, and yet they are. They're little sponges, and we as their parents need to be the ones who guard what enters their environment and know what that content is. So being a part of that activity with them, knowing ahead of time what they're engaged in. Social media, screen time it's become rapidly a part of our life. It's a part of our social lives, it's a part of our professional lives, and it's a part of our educational lives. And that I don't see changing. It's rapidly increasing, which means we have to keep up and we have to be very smart about what it is that we're bringing into our homes and into our lives of our children.
I know that, a couple of years ago in the Sioux Falls School District, we started with the one-to-one technology initiative, and, questions at that time about, well, you're just adding to a child's screen time. Frankly, if we did not have technology, our children would be behind in terms of how others are learning, how the world is requiring people to learn nowadays. So it's kind of a mixed bag of, you have to weigh that out. And but even in the classroom, it's a good mix of book time and of, we're going to use the smart board now, and we're going to, do those different kinds of things.
And that's what we as parents need to be able to do at home as well. So we know it's going to be a part of our lives. And so to be engaged with your child, to teach your child at a very young age what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And kids will make mistakes. And so to take that mistake and help become a learning process for them, but set boundaries at home. So when is screen time and when is not screen time? For us at our house, as kids got older, it was harder to get everybody around the table at dinner, but that's one of the times that is a no screen time. When we're all there at supper time and we're talking, that's a no screen time. If we're going to go out to eat as a family, that's a no screen time. When we're in church, your phone's off and in your pocket, and it's a no screen time. So we had to start setting those boundaries very young. And more importantly than reinforcing those boundaries, we as parents have to model that. So if that's a rule at home, it's a rule for everybody. And kids will follow our lead. So if what I want to do is limit their screen time, I need to make sure I'm limiting mine as well.
And I think screens have not only been an issue for children, but as parents, sometimes they take us away from attending to our child and their needs at home as well, and that can impact kids too.
I think so. I think, if kids are in an infant seat or some type of container, so that their parent can be using social media, I think that is missing an opportunity. I think it should be used with caution. And the other thing I wanted to add about that screen-free time is that screens in a child's bedroom are detrimental to sleep. Light entering the retina, whether it's from a computer screen or an iPhone, changes the way that our body produces sleep hormones like melatonin. And so rather than thinking about supplementing, just using the common sense and keeping screens off.
I hear from my kids oh, if I had a TV in my room,
Yes.
I would fall asleep faster.
Yeah.
And I don't see that because when they're watching, they're very intently watching what's going on. I mean, you try to say, one of the children's names, it's time to do this, and they just have this look of like, they're dazed because they're paying such close attention that I can't believe that would actually help you fall asleep.
And even if they do fall asleep in front of the TV, it changes the type of sleep that a child is getting. So their brain maybe wasn't as ready for sleep as needed to be, and so that deep, really restful sleep that kids need to recharge may not be occurring during that night of sleep.
Mm-hmm. The other night I happened to be coming home from a work event. It was after 10 o'clock, and I saw a young boy and his father walking across the street from a convenience store, both of them looking at a screen. And the young boy, I would say probably 10 or 12, had I'm guessing it was a pop. It was in like a fountain drink cup. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I am exhausted at 10 o'clock, and here this child has caffeine and the screen in front of him and is nowhere near ready for bed. But those limits, I think we all have to really think about how important
Absolutely.
that is to kids. I mean, we're sort of stealing away what their needs are by putting those things in front of them.
I think of myself when I've had a night like that. I've had caffeine too late in the day, or I've just been overstimulated, and how I feel the next day. And then when you think of a child's brain being that much less mature, and all the things that they need to juggle at school, the social interactions, the academic, and how that is for them when they've had a late night or a not very restful night.
Yeah, and then that again sort of exhibits itself in behaviors.
Absolutely,
Or certainly can, because they don't know how to cope with those things. And the behaviors get to be, not only is it just a disruption in a school day, but it in some cases the behaviors are becoming more and more serious and acting out and those kinds of things. And so it's teaching the kids all of these different things.
Yeah.
That's important.
And setting the boundaries and the limits and the daily routines. So we know that having that screen time to fall asleep or right before we go to sleep isn't the best thing for kids. We know they need sleep. We also know routines are important, and we know that they learn best when engaged with individuals in authentic activities. So to set the limit of screen time is done at this time in the evening, and then you roll into those activities that can occur every day that help kids get ready for bed and calm themselves and engage with you as their parents. So reading stories, bath time, all of those things that can lead to a better night's sleep, which might potentially lead to a better next day for that child in school.
Something I'm discovering as my children get a little older is, we did the bedtime stories and those types of things, and had, just one more book, and, those types of activities before bedtime. Is that reading with your child doesn't have to stop when they enter school or when the reading minutes are no longer required, 20 minutes every evening or whatever the case is. But I've really found a lot of value in reading the same book that my 7th grader is reading, and having those conversations. There are some excellent books in that preteen sort of category. And I'm enjoying it as much as, she's doing it because she needs to do, a project in her English language arts class, and she needs, to have read a book of a different genre and such. But I'm enjoying it because it allows us to have a conversation about something other than, how was your day? Fine. Conversation's over.
It's still fun at that age to read to your child and then have them read to you, or say, I'm going to read this chapter, you read that chapter, and let's come back together and talk about what happened. And so to take those books at that, preteen and teen level and do it together as an activity it's great modeling for parents. Also keeps you in tune. And kids, I think, appreciate the boundaries and appreciate knowing that their parent is involved at that level.
I think it's a great alternative to screen time. And the type that the fact that you're reading the same thing that your child is reading really opens the door again for those authentic relationships and becoming a better reader, because you become a better reader no matter if you're reading for fun or you're reading something that's more academic, sets the stage for success all the way through your life.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, the one book in particular I can think of was a student navigating friendships and relationships, and that child had a disability, and but it was real life setting, not in the in the second, third grade kind of setting. It was in junior high and middle school age and those types of things, and wanting to be involved in activities and things like that that maybe they couldn't do physically, but it was something like the quiz bowl, and this person had just, after everybody opened up, had the opportunity to participate in the quiz bowl and won the championship in the end, So I think, again, there are just so many great books out there that have good stories and good lessons.
There are, and books as kids get older can bring in those elements of conflict that we see socially and in our communities and in the world, and gives you an opportunity to not just, again, know the content of what your child is engaged with, but also to bring up those conversations that can sometimes be hard just to start randomly. But now we have a context and a base to start it, which can lead to more in-depth conversations that really relate to your expectations as a parent and your child's expectations as your child.
Talking about screen time, I'm certain I've been guilty of that as well, where I'm immersed in something or watching for an email to come back or what have you, and the phone is constantly in your hand, and that accessibility has probably stolen a little bit of our our, I wouldn't say our ability, because we all make decisions, but it does take that attention away from our kids when we could be spending more with them, and particularly in the preteen and teen years when it's needed. So crucial time for them, for sure. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time. Any final thoughts you have or things that you think parents need to know about that screen time? If you have a TV in the room already, it's not too late to take it out.
I agree.
It can be done.
Yeah, I think it's a continuum. If we imagine most kids are spending 7 hours in front of a screen, it would be hard to go right down to 2 hours. So I think just a mindfulness of what you're doing yourself as a parent, as a role model with your phone or other screens, and then just working hard to make sure that there's more quality interaction, more face-to-face, keeping screens off during supper hour and other meaningful times, and then just trying to gradually cut back.
And it is a good opportunity to, when the TV's on, okay, TV's going off. Everybody pick up a book, or everybody, we're going to do this activity together. In my case, it's everybody walk around the house and pick up 10 little items and put them where they need to be, because that would be 50 items that I wouldn't have to, the little eraser that gets left on the couch because someone was doing homework, or those types of things. So there can be a benefit in all of this for you too, if you want to try something along that line. But any final thoughts from you, Val?
I would agree with what has already been said, and look for those, because it is hard to change those habits, but look for those natural times when that might be able to occur easily and then build. So meal times, the TV can be off, and we limit that interaction with the screens. Another time is in the morning when we're all getting ready to go to school and to work. Just have the TV off. It's less distraction. We're focused on where we need to be and get going, and that might build then into more natural times when the TV can be off, and then replace that time with those quality interactions and activities for kids.
Absolutely. Well, good ideas, and a challenge I think every one of us, if we're real with each other, a challenge all of us face. because it is so prevalent in our world today, having the accessibility of phones and iPads, and at work we're on computers all day long, and so it's a reality of our life, but it also has to be done with some thought in mind and some limitations set. So thanks for joining us today on Positive Parenting. I'll continue to work on my own screen time at my house and personally modeling the best behavior possible. So I hope you're willing to do the same. It'll benefit our kids in the long run. Thanks for joining us.